as he is about to launch into this attempt to overcome skepticism, he lays down what he calls a provisional morality that he will follow while he's living in such uncertainty. And the provisional morality is essentially this same kind of thing. He will restrain judgment, he will restrain action until such time as he knows, and so on and so forth. So it's this picture of reason controlling emotion, reason controlling, guiding the will, all the way through.
The only thing that confused me was you said that while the passions may be sort of stimulated by the body, they're also in the mind.
No, there is a consciousness of them in the mind. Because in the mind-body interaction, just as the decisions of the will, which occur in the mind, produce bodily changes, bodily actions, so the passions, which are stirrings of the movements of the animal spirits, okay, in the body, have their conscious byproducts in the mind. And those conscious byproducts are ideas, yes, but confused ideas, adventitious ideas. And they must not dominate the body. They must not dominate the mind and cause trouble. Okay? So in that sense, it's a rationalistic kind of ethic. Yeah. We're ruled by reason. We should be, not by emotion. Spinoza likewise. Okay. The big difference in Spinoza, we'll see, is that Spinoza cannot assert the freedom of the will. He's a determinist, and that makes quite a difference. In Spinoza, you begin to pick up a rather familiar paradigm of what follows from a pantheistic point of view. You know, we met this in Plotinus, the Neoplatonist. With pantheism, you're going to have determinism. Okay? You won't have any separateness and the kind of freedom that goes with separateness, such that an individual has initiative, is self-ruled. No. And then problems arise about making any clear distinction between good and evil. Because what status is there for evil if everything is one? The distinction gets blurred. The way in which Plotinus tried to handle it was with his theory of emanations, thence degrees of, so forth. Okay. Incidentally, pantheism is not just a matter nowadays of Eastern religion, inasmuch as Eastern influences have reasserted themselves in the West. Well, at least in the western part of this country. New Age movements are essentially pantheistic, you see. The writings of New Age are not systematic, not spelled out carefully, but there's enough there, I think, to help us see that it's a kind of pantheism. A more romanticized kind of pantheism, closer to the 19th century than it is to Spinoza. But the same sorts of paradigms occur. Okay, let's move then from his historical importance to what I've called general features. In fact, those general features are already beginning to show. And the first general feature, of course, is this view that God and nature are one and the same. God and nature are one and the same. Now, you'll find he gets into that by virtue of his concept of substance. Now, he doesn't start with a methodological doubt, no. He starts with definitions. He starts with a definition of substance, among other things. And the way he defines substance leads him to the conclusion that God and nature are one and the same thing. Okay. Now, if God and nature are one and the same thing, then you find two aspects of things. That is to say, in God, there is both thought and extension. God is infinite. Extension. As if God is the whole arena of space. But God at the same time is infinite in thought. And you get echoes here of the Platonic tradition, or perhaps of the Stoic Logos concept. You see. Thought and extension. These are two attributes of God. One God and two known attributes. There may be other attributes we don't know, but these are two that are manifest in us and in our experience. In fact, these two attributes are evident in both infinite mode and finite modes. The infinite mode of thought is God, the mind of God. The infinite mode of extension is nature in all its vastness. But finite modes of thought are yours and mine. And finite modes of extension are yours and mine, bodies, as we call them. But these are not substances. Mind is not a substance separate from a body. Body is not a substance separate from mind. Your and my bodies are not substances separate from God. We are simply finite modes of the being of God. In that sense, you do think God's thoughts after him. How else could you? Your thoughts are part of God's self-consciousness. So there is no notion of separate substances in Descartes' sense. There are distinguishable attributes, distinguishable modes. You can distinguish your body from the body sitting next to you. You can distinguish your thoughts from somebody else's. But that's not a distinction of substances. It's a distinction of modes, one finite mode from another finite mode. Now, you can see in this distinction between the finite and the infinite, if you like, you can see echoes of Plato's divided line. You see. The eternal and the temporal, the infinite and the finite. Now, it's only echoes, because Plato would turn over in his grave to think of nature as eternal, you see. Although his one certainly was, but nature, no. Nature in any physical sense. So the Platonic echo is there, but what he's talking about is not two different realms, forms and particulars. No. What he's talking about is finite and infinite modes of one and the same realm. Yes. Finite and infinite modes of God, which is nature. Now, it's this then that poses the perennial problems and the perennial topics, so that in a few moments we'll be seeing how this double aspect monism of his is worked out on this whole range of dualities, you see, where none of them represent two separate things. God and nature are not separate things. Thought and extension are not separate things. Freedom and determinism are not separate things. Good and evil are not separate things. Reason and emotion are not separate. So forth. They're aspects of one and the same thing. Two sides of one phenomenon, all the way through. So what you need to get a hold of in terms of general features are the terms substance, attribute, and mode. Okay? Substance, attributes, and modes. Now that's the overall. Make sure you're clear about that. There is only one substance. But one substance has at least two attributes. And those two attributes are identifiable in the infinite mode, but also in finite modes. Yeah. You are not a being. You're a finite mode of being. Your thinking is simply the finite mode of the attribute of thinking of the one all-inclusive being. You're thinking your present ideas about a finite modification mode of the infinite thinking of God. Just that. Substance, attribute, mode. Does that come across clearly enough? Okay, the diagram helps to catch the terminology. Okay, so that if you wanted to extend the divided line, you see, all the way down, then what you would have would be our thoughts, our bodies. Okay, these would be in the realm of particulars. Is Spinoza a realist about universals or just a conceptualist? Well, I'm inclined to say just a conceptualist. That is to say, we do really think in universal terms, in abstract terms. We do. Yeah, he's no nominalist. But if a realist means, are there universal principles which are separable in some way from particulars? No. No. So closer to a conceptualist, I think. And again, the Stoic picture is the one which guides. Okay.